Hello, my name is Michael Dwan Herrick. I'm a psychotherapist and life coach with over 40 years of experience. I'm currently in private practice in London. This is the 16th video in my series under the title Questioning Woke Psychotherapy. In this video, I will provide some explanation for my use of the word woke. Since I'm using it in the title of this series, I want to say something about what I think the word means and why I'm using it. As it's been pointed out by many people that it has become a shorthand slur, I feel the need to clarify where I stand on it. Let's start by acknowledging the origin of the term woke and its evolution over time as African-American Vernacular English. It is thought to have originated with the black blues singer Huddie Ledbetter, better known as Leadbelly. In the afterword of his 1938 song titled Scottsboro Boys, about the 9 young Scottsboro men wrongfully accused of rape, Leadbelly concluded with, "Best be woke, keep their eyes open," to racism. What happened to the Scottsboro Boys is clearly an example of the justice system being infected by racism. I had read somewhere that they received the death penalty and were executed, but that's not what happened. There were trials and appeals and retrials. Charges were finally dropped for 4 of the 9 defendants. The other 5 were convicted and received sentences ranging from 75 years to death. 3 served prison sentences. All 3 were released or escaped by 1946. And Clarence Norris, the oldest defendant and the only one sentenced to death in the final trial, jumped parole in 1946 and went into hiding. He was found in 1976 and pardoned by Governor George Wallace. Norris later wrote a book about his experiences. He died in 1989 as the last surviving defendant. Harper Lee drew on the story of the Scottsboro Boys for the writing of To Kill a Mockingbird, which was published in 1960 and made into a film in 1962. I think telling this story is an important acknowledgement of where the black vernacular use of the word woke comes from. In this context, it has a direct, visceral, and unarguable meaning. Then, also in 1962, black novelist Melvin Kelly, in his article in the New York Times titled "If You're Woke, You Dig It," provides an understanding of what the term means in black slang. Basically, being well-informed and up-to-date about the reality of racism. Fast forward to 2012, and woke enters mainstream usage with the BLM movement. And in 2017, it was included in the Oxford English Dictionary with the following definition: originally well-informed, up-to-date, now chiefly alert to racial or social discrimination and injustice. Since its origin with Leadbelly, those claiming to be woke have added a ton of baggage to the word. In 1968, 4 days before he was shot on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his last Sunday sermon at the Washington National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. It was entitled, "Remaining Awake Through a Great Revolution." Although King doesn't say the word woke, he uses the concept as it was understood by many at the time. Those who are upset about the current usage of the term have said that it is an attack on MLK's message and his campaign for racial equality. The thing is, people declaring themselves to be woke now repudiate King more than anyone else. They reject his ideas about color blindness and being judged by one's character and not by the color of one's skin. They reject his human universalism. Additionally, they have also added postmodernism's rejection of objective truth to their argument, and they push for equity of outcomes, or cosmic justice, to use Thomas Sowell's term, instead of equality of opportunity. Those who took possession of the term turned it into something worthy, of criticism, something King would not agree with. Most of those now using it as a slur, including me, are not against the principle of basic universal human rights, nor are we, in favor of racism. Most would stand by Leadbelly, who never heard of postmodernism, and agree that we should be awake to injustices. Many are liberal and left of center. In their usual tactic of trying to control language, they, the woke, would have everyone think that the critical use of the word woke could only be coming from some morally bankrupt, far-right ignoramus who just doesn't understand or want to understand their noble cause. But as with many other words, they have changed its meaning to suit their agenda. To back up for a minute, first of all, for me personally, woke became an important word in the mid-70s as a student and practitioner of Tibetan Buddhism. The most parsimonious way to describe what I believe is meant by woke from the Buddhist perspective is a dawning awareness that one's entire sense of self is constructed. It's a constructed illusion. Clinging to this illusion, defending and promoting it, is what causes suffering. Seeing through it and transcending it is the path to liberation. So it has also seemed quite ironic to me that being super aware of, primarily rooted in, and attached to one's racial identity should be considered to be awake. Isn't this the problem with white supremacists? Surely there is much in the relative world to be aware of and to care about, including racial identity and racial justice. But to be awake in a way that fosters ultimate liberation, there is another view. From the Buddhist perspective, all beings have Buddha nature, which is an awareness that transcends relative, separate constructions of self. A full recognition of this, I believe, would do far more to end racism than anti-racism campaigns as currently understood and practiced. And this doesn't just apply to racial identities, but any group identity. I'm not claiming that this should be the only acceptable connotation for the word woke. I am saying that no one owns the word or gets to decide how it should be used or who can use it. Still, I want to acknowledge the original meaning of the term within social justice movements. Yes, being aware of injustices is the first step in doing something about them. Those who've come to complain about the way the word woke is used as an insult all trace the history of its use back to the time when it simply meant being aware of injustices for the sake of rectifying them. Who can argue reasonably with that? Not me. The thing is, those now calling themselves woke, or used to call themselves woke, have added a whole lot of ideology that comes with it. Basically, postmodernism, and some would say a form of cultural Marxism. They reduce everything human to two groups, the oppressed and the oppressors. Every possible exchange or communication between these two groups is interpreted in terms of power dynamics. The privileged group is always inevitably doing something to marginalize and victimize the oppressed group. And the postmodern part of this is that there is no reliable objective truth to anything, so there can be no reality testing of claims of unjust treatment. If it feels marginalizing or racist or sexist or homophobic or transphobic or whatever, then it is. To even question this is considered proof and a further instance of the offense being claimed. And we're to ignore the fact that people saying so are making truth claims that, according to postmodernism, can't be asserted as objectively true. Oh well. So over time, what began as an important and valuable kind of awareness became a hypervigilance bordering on paranoia that crowds out awareness of many other important, valuable things. For instance, kindness, generosity, curiosity, cooperation, common humanity and self-transcendence, to name just a few. Social justice activism in this form thrives on a constant and ubiquitous search for any and all evidence that its ideology is correct in dividing the world into oppressors and oppressed, no matter how trivial or far-fetched the evidence might be, is like the proverbial hammer that can only see nails and is blind to nearly everything else. So for me, when I use the term woke, it's intentional. It's not that I'm not aware of its original meaning within social justice movements or unsympathetic to that meaning. It's that I find it painfully ironic that it's become hypnotizing, not awake, due to its obsessive, dogmatic, ideologically driven preoccupations. I use the word in this ironic sense, and yes, I mean it to be critical, so I'm not surprised if some find it offensive. As Jordan Peterson has said, in order to think, we have to risk being offensive. As I've said, it has also been my observation over time that the radical left, via critical social justice theory, has attempted, often successfully, to control language as a strategy for furthering their arguments and agendas, cunningly and ironically, using indirect ways to gain power in its attack on anything that smells of a power grab. For instance, racism no longer means judging someone by the color of their skin. It must include the use of power. And equality now means equality of outcome, not just opportunity, as all unequal outcomes for different groups are automatically assumed to be the result of unjust systemic power imbalances. This, whether or not it can be demonstrated with actual evidence. White supremacy now applies equally to David Duke and the KKK as to your Aunt Linda, who is too busy raising her kids to hate anyone. No need for any racist thoughts, feelings, or overt behavior. Simply being perceived as a beneficiary of systemic racism and not devoting one's life to fighting it makes you a white supremacist. The words men and women don't mean what they used to mean. The number of gender pronouns is continually growing, and the butchering of children is called gender-affirming care. Asking someone where they are from is now a microaggression. Words are violence. Silence is violence. The words phobia and hate are used to describe speech that doesn't agree with the prevailing social justice narrative, with no evidence that the speaker feels or is expressing fear or hate. Trauma now refers to uncomfortable experiences, on and on. And now it is insisted that people using the word woke, their own term for themselves in a critical way, is motivated by right-wing bigots who don't care about social justice. So I'm not inclined to withdraw my use of the word woke. It conveys my critical view and suggests the irony I mean it to imply. I've tried to steelman woke psychotherapy in the process of also criticizing it. I think this is fair and necessary, but I have grown weary of ceding to all contentions about the use of language. It does not seem to me that softening language to avoid offense does anything to facilitate real dialogue in this case. My ironic use of the word woke goes to the heart of my critique, something that true believers are immune to hearing or recognizing, with or without this word. I don't believe walking on eggshells is the way forward, and so I do not apologize for saying woke, and I do not expect an apology for all of the vile things that radical social justice activists say about those who disagree with him. Thanks for sticking with me. If you like this video, please give it a like, subscribe to my channel, click the bell for notifications, leave me a comment, and share it with a friend. In the meantime, take care of yourself and each other, and I hope you'll join me for the next video. Bye for now.